my daughter said. Finally, Mom found a man I could proudly call Dad at her wedding party when she was introducing visitors. She turned to me and said, "Cheers to the man who paid all my fees. He is done playing the role of being called Dad by me." I felt humiliated and embarrassed whilst everyone laughed and cheered her on. What happened next will shock you. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Gilbert Ollie from London. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted to be needed. When I married Denise, her daughter, Nia, was 4 years old. Small, curious, and heartbreakingly quiet around new people. She clung to her mother's leg the first time we met, eyeing me like I was a stranger who might disappear if she blinked. And to be honest, I might have, if it weren't for the way she looked at Denise. There was a vulnerability in that gaze I couldn't ignore. I didn't marry into a family. I stepped into a vacuum. Her biological father had vanished just after her first birthday, leaving behind nothing but court papers and a string of broken promises. No calls, no visits, not even a child support payment. Denise never spoke of him unless she had to, but her silence was loud enough. And I, fresh off a successful business deal and newly humbled by a heart attack scare, decided to trade in ambition for stability. Loving Nia felt like a calling, not an obligation. I remember the first time she called me Dad. She was 6. It was bedtime, and I had just finished reading Goodnight Moon for what had to be the 1,000th time. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, gave me a sleepy smile, and whispered, "Good night, Dad." Just like that. I almost didn't react, afraid to scare the moment away. But I walked out of her room that night with tears in my eyes and a promise quietly made. She would never want for anything as long as I lived. That promise became my mission. I paid for her private school tuition even when Denise said public school was just fine. I hired a tutor when she struggled with math in the 4th grade. When she wanted to quit ballet, I sat in the studio lobby every Saturday, encouraging her to try one more class, one more stretch. She eventually quit anyway, but not before earning a solo in her school recital, which she still denies ever mattered. She got braces at 11, a car at 16, and a summer internship at my company when she turned 19. Every Christmas, her stocking had double the gifts. Every birthday, I rented a venue, ordered custom cakes, and made sure her friends never left without party favors. Her college tuition? Paid in full. When she said she wanted to study marketing, I bought her a new MacBook and connected her with one of my former colleagues in the field. But through all of this, I never asked to be called Dad again. Not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't want to pressure her. I thought love meant giving quietly, trusting that she'd see it. I thought showing up, every day, in every small way, would be enough to build something real. And for a long time, it felt like it was. She sent me Father's Day cards every June. She once wrote in one of them, "You're the man who made me feel safe." I kept that card in my desk drawer, right beside the lease to her college apartment. When people asked if I had kids, I never hesitated. "Yes," I'd say. "A daughter. She's amazing." As her wedding approached, I felt a strange kind of excitement. Nervous, too, but mostly proud. I was walking a young woman down the aisle who had once asked me to help her put pigtails in her hair. She had grown into someone confident, ambitious, and, I believed, grateful. She hadn't asked me to give a speech, and I didn't push. She hadn't even officially asked me to walk her down the aisle, though Denise told me not to take it personally. I figured she was overwhelmed with wedding plans and that she'd sort it out closer to the date. The truth is, I didn't want to force my place in her story. I just wanted to be part of it. The morning of the wedding, I ironed my suit twice. I polished my shoes and wrote a check to cover the florist's last-minute upcharge because she'd changed her mind about peonies. Denise was buzzing with energy, all nerves and mascara. Nia barely looked at me when I saw her in her dress. She gave me a quick hug, took a few photos, and then rushed off to speak to someone else. I told myself not to read into it. The day wasn't about me. It was about her. But deep down, I wanted a moment. A shared look. A quiet thank you. Something to tell me I wasn't just a footnote in her big day. Instead, I stood to the side, smiling at guests and sipping champagne, waiting for something I couldn't quite name. Then the reception started, and everything changed. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly, casting a warm glow across the room as soft piano music played in the background. Glasses clinked. Waitstaff glided between tables. It was elegant, tasteful, exactly the kind of wedding Nia had always said she wanted. I watched her from my table, laughing with her bridesmaids, her long curls bouncing as she moved from one conversation to the next. She looked radiant. Denise sat beside me, dabbing the corner of her eyes like the mother of the bride is supposed to. I tried to relax into the atmosphere, but there was a low, unsettling hum building in the back of my skull. Something didn't sit right, though I couldn't name it. I chalked it up to the emotional toll of the day. I reminded myself, she's happy. That's what matters. When the MC called for toasts, a ripple of excitement moved through the room. The best man spoke first, standard jokes, a few heartfelt words, nothing out of place. Then it was Nia's turn. She took the mic with the confidence of someone who'd been trained in public speaking, her smile lighting up the room. Her voice, strong and clear, cut through the noise as she began thanking the guests, the venue, the vendors, her husband's family. Then she turned to her mother. "To my beautiful mom," she said, "who held my hand through every stage of my life. You are the strongest woman I know." Denise teared up instantly. The room let out a collective awe. I smiled genuinely. She deserved the praise. And then, just as I started to lift my glass, Nia shifted her weight and smiled even wider. "And to the man who showed me what a real father looks like." She paused, the dramatic timing of a seasoned speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you all to someone very special. My mom's fiancé, Ray." I blinked. "Ray? My wife's fiancé?" Applause burst out across the room as a man I'd only met twice stood up 2 tables away, smiling sheepishly, waving. Denise laughed, almost bashfully. I sat motionless, the stem of my champagne flute sweating between my fingers. Nia continued, glowing. "When my mom brought Ray into our lives, I finally understood what it meant to have a father who sees me, really sees me. Someone I'm proud to call Dad." Laughter, then cheers. Some guests turned to look at me, confused. Others looked away awkwardly. I couldn't move. My ears rang, like I was underwater. Every syllable that followed hit me like a slap. "And of course, there's the man who paid for my schooling." "Thank you, Mr. Johnson," she said, turning directly to me with a grin. "You really played the role well." She winked, and everyone laughed again. There was no anger in her voice. No sarcasm. Just dismissal. A pat on the head for the man who had funded her life. My stomach dropped. I forced a tight smile and raised my glass like the polite puppet she apparently thought I was. People clapped. Denise leaned in and whispered something about Nia being too much sometimes. But she was laughing. So was Ray. And Nia? She looked satisfied. The rest of the evening was a blur. People danced. I didn't. Someone tried to get me to pose for a family photo, and I declined. Nia didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. I left before the cake was cut. Drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel like it might float away. When I got there, I sat in my study for 2 hours, staring at a photo of Nia in her high school graduation cap. I'd framed it myself. It sat right beside the Father's Day card she wrote me at 15. "You're the man who made me feel safe." The card might as well have been written in another language. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind replayed her words like a looping tape, played the role, paid for my schooling, finally understood what a real father looks like. Each phrase dug deeper than the last. I wasn't her real dad. I was the ATM, the stand-in, the extra. And if Denise was already engaged to another man, how long had she been planning this? How long had they been laughing behind my back? By morning, I had my lawyer on the phone. "Remove her name from the will," I said. "Give it all to the orphanage on Ashford Lane." He paused. "All of it. Every dollar." "And your wife?" "File the papers. I want a divorce." I terminated Nia's company contract that same morning. Had her email revoked, her badge disabled. There would be no explanation. No back and forth. If she wanted a new father so badly, let him provide for her. Let him fund her lifestyle, her career, her health insurance. I wasn't angry. I was done. I didn't announce it. I didn't storm into any rooms. I simply removed her from my life as swiftly and quietly as she had removed me from her heart. The thing about pulling the plug on a relationship, whether it's romantic, parental, or business, is that most people expect a warning shot, some final argument, a screaming match, or a sobbing phone call. But I gave her nothing, just silence. The same silence I had stood in the night of her wedding, as she performed her little monologue with that smug, glossy smile. If she could erase me from her story with a speech, then I could erase her from mine with paperwork. I didn't need closure. I needed distance. The first call came from Denise, 3 days after I filed the divorce papers. She didn't sound angry. She sounded inconvenienced. "You could have talked to me," she said, as if the affair and the engagement and the public betrayal weren't discussion-worthy. I let her speak for exactly 42 seconds before I cut in. "You knew," I said. "You laughed. I didn't know she would say that. But you laughed." There was a pause, just long enough to confirm that she had no excuse. Then she sighed, the kind of exaggerated exhale people use when they're trying to make you feel like the problem. "So you're really divorcing me over a toast?" "No. I'm divorcing you because I don't know who the hell you are anymore." She hung up. I stared at my phone and blocked her number. That was the last time I heard her voice. Nia, on the other hand, took her sweet time reaching out. I suppose she assumed she'd earned some immunity, that she could humiliate me, brush it off as a joke, and still collect her weekly check. But when her assistant couldn't log into our company dashboard and her emails bounced back undelivered, she realized something had shifted. I expected a phone call. What I got instead was a knock on my office door. She breezed in like nothing was wrong, wearing those designer heels I paid for and a trench coat that probably cost more than my first car. "Okay, seriously, what's going on?" she said, like a spoiled executive instead of my daughter. "Why is my company access revoked?" I didn't look up. I signed the last document in front of me, clipped it into a folder, and handed it to my assistant. Then I met her eyes. "You don't work here anymore." "What? Are you firing me?" "For what?" "I'm not firing you. I'm cutting you off. There's a difference." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Because of the wedding speech? Are you serious right now? You called another man your father in front of 300 people. I was trying to be funny. It was a joke." "Then maybe you should have gone into comedy, not marketing." She blinked. For the first time, something cracked in her expression. "You're overreacting." "No, Nia. I've been underreacting for 20 years. I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't point. I just walked past her and opened the door. "You can go now." She didn't move. "You're seriously kicking me out of your life?" I looked at her, really looked. The expensive jewelry, the fake tan, the Instagram filter confidence. And suddenly, all I saw was a stranger. "You did that first," I said. She stormed out. By the end of the week, she had posted a video online. It was the usual playbook. Tears, shaky voice, grainy iPhone footage. "My dad cut me off and fired me after my wedding," she said, deliberately omitting the fact that I wasn't her biological father and that she'd publicly mocked me. The comments section exploded. Some called me cruel. Others asked what kind of father abandons his daughter over a speech. But it didn't take long before people started asking better questions. A woman named Sharon, an ex-employee from my HR department, commented under the video. "I worked for your dad's company for 12 years. I saw how he treated you like a princess. You were never grateful." Her comment got pinned. Then others followed. Former teachers, family friends, even one of Nia's old high school classmates chimed in. "I remember when your dad paid for your field trip to Paris. Mine couldn't even afford my textbooks." The tide began to turn. People started seeing the full picture, that it wasn't about a single speech. It was about a pattern, a slow erosion of respect, a growing sense of entitlement wrapped in faux affection. I said nothing, posted nothing. I watched it all unfold like an outsider. For once, I didn't need to defend myself. The receipts spoke louder than I ever could. What surprised me most was how quiet my house became, not physically, but emotionally. There was no more tension, no undercurrent of being tolerated. I sat on my porch one evening, watching the sun drop behind the trees, and realized I hadn't felt this light in years. Not happy, not yet, but free. I always thought wealth insulated you from the world's noise. That enough zeros in your bank account could buffer you from public opinion, from gossip, from shame. But I learned very quickly that money only makes the headlines louder. Within a week of Nia's video going live, I became a trending topic, not because of what I did, but because of how little I said. The silence made people curious. Dangerous. Everyone loves a scandal, but what they love more is a mystery they can fill in themselves. Suddenly, strangers were writing think pieces on fatherhood and obligation, dissecting my family like we were a failed social experiment. There were blog posts, reaction videos, even a TikTok therapist giving a 3-part analysis of why narcissistic dads abandon their daughters. Nia leaned in hard. More interviews. More crying. More of the same script. I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I was done trying to speak into an echo chamber. Let them speculate. I knew what was real, but not everyone was content watching from the sidelines. It was a Thursday afternoon when I received an unexpected knock at my door. I was home alone, sorting through old documents, birth certificates, report cards, photo albums I hadn't touched in years. I thought maybe it was another journalist. Instead, it was Marcus, my late brother's son, my nephew. I hadn't seen him in nearly a decade. "Hey, uncle," he said. His voice was deeper than I remembered, but calm. He looked like his father. Same quiet eyes, same crooked posture. "Marcus?" I stepped outside, stunned. "You look like a man now." He laughed. "Been one for a while." I invited him in. We sat in the living room, the photo of Nia at 12 still on the mantle. He noticed it immediately. "I saw everything online," he said. "Figured it was time we talked." There was a long pause before I answered. "You came all this way for gossip?" "No. I came because I remember how you used to show up to my basketball games when Dad couldn't. How you gave me my first laptop. How you talked to me like I mattered." His words caught me off guard. I'd always thought of those gestures as small, unimportant. But to Marcus, they weren't. "I also remember how much you loved Nia," he added. "Everyone did." Past tense, I muttered. He leaned forward. "I'm not here to take sides. I'm here to ask you something." I raised an eyebrow. "Do you regret raising her?" The question hit harder than I expected. It sat in the room like a third person, watching us both. I took a deep breath. "No," I said finally. "I regret assuming it meant something to her. I regret thinking love would be enough to earn respect." He nodded slowly. "She's hurt. I'm not defending her. But you were the only dad she knew for 20 years. That's not nothing. I was the only provider she knew. Not the same thing. She's 25, man. Still figuring life out. People say dumb shit when they're trying to assert themselves." "I didn't cut her off because she said something dumb," I said. "I cut her off because she meant it." That shut the conversation down for a moment. Marcus leaned back, sighed. "I get it. I do. I guess I hoped you wouldn't disappear the way everyone else does." "I'm not disappearing," I said quietly. "I'm just uninviting people from the life I built." We sat there for a while in silence. Eventually, he stood to leave. "I'm around," he said, "if you ever want to talk. About anything." "Thanks," I said, and meant it. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet again. But it didn't feel as hollow this time. Maybe because someone who knew the full story finally looked me in the eye and didn't flinch. Or maybe because I needed that question, "Do you regret raising her?" to be asked aloud so I could finally answer it. That night, Denise tried calling me from a new number. I didn't pick up, but I did listen to the voicemail. "You're making a mistake," she said. "You're ruining what's left of this family." Funny thing was, I didn't feel ruined. I felt like I was finally cleaning house. She showed up without warning. It had been nearly 2 months since the wedding. The speech, the fallout, the silence. I had started to believe she wouldn't come back, that the chapter was closed, clean, and brutal. But life has a way of reopening wounds just as the scab begins to form. I was in the middle of trimming the hedges when I heard the car door slam. I turned to see Nia stepping out of a silver SUV, sunglasses on, face unreadable. I didn't move. Just waited, clippers in hand, heart tightening. She approached slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal. I suppose, in her mind, I had become unpredictable, someone capable of burning bridges without a second glance. She was right. I had changed, but not out of spite, out of necessity. "Can we talk?" she asked. I set the clippers down, wiped my hands on a rag, and gestured toward the porch. We sat without speaking for nearly a minute. She took off her sunglasses, and I noticed her eyes were puffy. Not freshly cried, but recently worn down. She had lost weight, or maybe it was just the stress showing in her face. I didn't ask. "Why did you do it?" she asked finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you cut me off?" I almost laughed. Almost. "Because you told an entire room that I was a role player. Not a real part of your life. Just a supporting character who paid the bills." It was a speech. A bad joke. People were laughing. I wasn't. She flinched. I continued. "I was sitting there thinking about every recital I sat through, every emergency room visit, every parent-teacher conference where I was the only one who showed up. I remembered how I stayed up all night helping you build that science fair volcano in 6th grade. I remembered buying you your first phone, your first car, your first laptop. I remembered all of it. And in that moment, you erased it. For applause." Nia looked away, blinking fast. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I was nervous. I wanted to include Ray. He's been really good to Mom. This isn't about Ray. It's about you choosing to humiliate me to elevate him. I didn't mean to humiliate you. But you did." Silence settled between us. She stared at the wooden floorboards like they might offer her a script. Eventually, she looked back up, anger flickering behind her eyes. "I've been hurting too, you know," she said. "You just dropped me like I was nothing. No call, no explanation. Just gone. I didn't drop you. I released you. You made it clear you didn't want me in that role anymore. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending 2 decades loving someone who sees you as a transaction." That stopped her. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I do love you. Do you?" I asked, not accusing, just tired. "Or do you love what I gave you?" Her eyes filled then. She didn't blink them away. "You were the only father I ever had. And yet you said I played the role. Like it was a job. Like I was acting. I messed up." I nodded. "Yes, you did." We sat there, both staring at the edge of the porch, both knowing there was no going back. She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the table between us. "What's this?" "A letter. I wrote it, in case you wouldn't let me speak. I don't expect anything. Just read it when you're ready." I didn't touch it, just looked at it sitting there like a peace offering wrapped in guilt. She stood, wiped her face, and looked at me one last time. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I hope someday you'll remember that I'm still your daughter." I shook my head gently. "You were never not my daughter, Nia. But that doesn't mean I can keep letting you hurt me." She left without another word. After she drove off, I sat on that porch for hours, the letter untouched. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be. But I felt no anger. Just sadness. A dull ache where something had been cut out, but hadn't stopped bleeding. I had wanted her to come, to say those things, but now that she had, all I felt was exhaustion. Like I'd climbed a mountain and found no view at the top, just fog. And still, even in the silence, I knew I had made the right decision. Grief doesn't always wear black. Sometimes it looks like a quiet house on a Tuesday morning, the click of a coffee machine, the rustle of newspapers you don't actually read. In the weeks after Nia left the porch, my days settled into a rhythm I hadn't known I needed. No calls from Denise. No entitled texts. No sudden requests for money disguised as family updates. Just space. Just silence. And in that space, I began to notice things I had long ignored. Like how tense I used to feel every time my phone buzzed, or how I'd been swallowing resentment for years like bitter pills, never calling it what it was. Love, they say. Family. But sometimes love is used as a leash. I never read the letter. Not because I was angry. I just didn't need another performance, another attempt to tidy up what she had so carelessly discarded. My decision wasn't made in rage. It was made in reality. That was what people never seemed to understand. They thought cutting her off meant I was punishing her, that I wanted to teach her a lesson. But I didn't. I simply wanted peace. And peace, I had learned, often requires sacrifice. What I did instead was revisit the orphanage on Ashford Lane. I hadn't been there in years, not since we did that holiday drive the year Nia turned 12. She'd helped pass out backpacks and crayons to the kids, smiling for pictures, posing like a future humanitarian. But even then, I remember her wiping her hands with sanitizer the moment we got in the car. That place smelled like bleach and sadness, she'd said. I had laughed at the time, thinking it was just teenage bluntness. But looking back, it was something colder, an early sign of the detachment that would grow like a vine between us. The woman who ran the orphanage remembered me. "Mr. Johnson," she said, hugging me with the kind of warmth that makes you forget your losses for half a second. "We thought we lost you." "You did," I said, "but I found my way back." We walked through the halls. They'd remodeled since I was last there. New tiles, fresh paint, fewer cracked windows. But the kids were the same. Wide-eyed, curious, hungry for affection. A little boy named Leo clung to my hand the moment I sat down. He had a Batman shirt and a scar above his left eyebrow. He didn't ask me for anything. He just leaned his head against my shoulder and sat there. It wrecked me. That night, I finalized the paperwork with my lawyer. The entire estate, every house, every investment, every policy would go to that orphanage. Not out of revenge, out of clarity, out of a desire to give everything I had to someone who might actually understand the value of being chosen. The story didn't end with a redemption arc. Nia never came back. Denise filed for spousal support, but was denied. Turns out, prenups are good for something after all. Ray, her new fiancé, posted some inspirational quotes about family on Instagram, and I muted him. The media lost interest. The public moved on. But I didn't need their attention to validate my choices. One afternoon, while sorting old boxes, I found a photo of Nia and me at her 5th birthday party. I was holding her up so she could blow out the candles. Her arms were around my neck. She looked happy. So did I. I didn't throw it away. I didn't frame it either. I just slipped it into a drawer. Some memories aren't meant to be erased. Just set aside. Peace didn't come like a wave. It came like a slow fade, like the volume lowering on a song you didn't realize was hurting your ears. I still had love for her, but I finally understood that love isn't permission. Love isn't unlimited credit. Love, when it's one-sided, turns into debt. And I was done being overdrawn. I never stopped being her father, but I had stopped being her fool. Have you ever had to choose between peace and family? Between being the bigger person or finally choosing yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. Was he right to walk away? Or should forgiveness have played a bigger role? If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more real-life family dramas that hit where it hurts. Your voice matters here. Let's talk about the lines between love, respect, and the power of walking away. See you soon in the next story.